All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Partnership Connections, a child welfare training and education podcast for those already working in or with an interest in working in child welfare in Rhode Island. My name is Stan Brazier, and I'm the project director for the learning partnership between the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF, and Rhode Island College. Our desire is to bring information from experts on a variety of topics, all at no cost to hardworking professionals and others. Joining me today as co-host again, and maybe she'll share a little of her experience with some of the trainings that our guest has done in the past for us, is Holly Pacheco from DCYF. Holly, good to see you again.
Hello. Nice to see you as well. Yes, I am a staff at DCYF in Rhode Island. I am a clinical training specialist, which means I'm one of the trainers there. And I've worked at the department for over 11 years total. I actually started back in 2005. I can't believe I can say that, but
Nice.
so great experience as a social worker. And now I train a lot of the new staff, and I work coordinating ongoing trainings for the staff, amongst a ton of other things. But
And you've
that's
sat in on both of our guests' trainings, and it's changed your life, right?
it's
totally
absolutely
transformed things.
transformed.
Awesome. All right, so today we're very excited to speak about the concepts of both growth mindset and mentoring mindset. Our guest is going to help us define what both of these terms mean, why they're important, and what we can actually do to apply these, not just to our professional lives, but also our personal lives as well. Please note a disclaimer that the views expressed by the hosts and guests of this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the college or DCYF or the organization that the guest represents. So without further ado, our guest today is Christopher Margadana. Christopher is the Senior Director of Training and Program Development at Mentor Rhode Island and has been with the organization for over 8 years. He has always had a love of learning and got his master's in education from Rhode Island College in 2015. He has had many successes throughout his career, including presenting at the National Mentoring Summit 7 years in a row. He is also a master trainer for multiple Mentor National trainings, including the Elements of Effective Practice for Mentoring and Connect, Focus, Grow, and Becoming a Better Mentor. When he's not at work, Christopher is the board president for the Community Players, a local community theater located in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Christopher, welcome, and it's great to see you again. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So we take a pretty similar approach with a lot of the podcasts we do. We kind of ask people to define terms like right off the bat. So a lot of people might not be familiar with the term growth mindset and mentoring mindset. Can you tell us what these are, kind of by starting us off and like laying the groundwork?
Yeah, of course. So a growth mindset is the belief that with practice, perseverance, and effort, people have limitless potential to learn and grow. People operating in the growth mindset tackle challenges with self-confidence, unconcerned with making mistakes, or being embarrassed, focused instead on the process of growth. So that is what is kind of the dictionary definition of growth mindset as we look to it.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that sticks out to me is you said unconcerned with, what was it? Unconcerned with
Making mistakes.
making mistakes. I think I think about that and I'm like, yeah, I feel like that's probably a big barrier for a lot of people, right? So how do we think about that, and how do we apply that sort of mindset to something that can be kind of a big challenge, a big hurdle for a lot of people to get over, is like their fear of making mistakes, especially in kind of like a high pressure job or area of work like social work or child welfare, where there's a lot at stake, right? So there's probably a lot of fear of making mistakes, right, Holly? Like you kind of had a lot of trepidation maybe. Can you maybe pull some of that out for us a little bit, talk a little bit more about like what it means to try to get over that fear of like making mistakes, and what does that mean for growth mindset?
Fear of making mistakes, fear of failing, I think would be a huge barrier for people.
Not only fear of failing like in your own professional role, but fear of failing the families that you're working with, right? So
Yeah, I think it's really hard. A lot of the times we kind of have that perfectionist mindset in our work, and we want to do the best that we can possibly do, right? This is our profession. It's what we do. But making mistakes is how we grow and learn from that. And so really there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. And so then how do we create environments for folks where it's, hey, it's okay in this controlled environment to make a mistake, or to say it's okay to ask as many questions as you want because that's how you grow and that's how you learn.
Okay, yeah. What are some tips and like strategies that you would recommend for someone to be able to help foster that? Do they have to rely on others? What do they have to do internally? What's some of the work that needs to be done to build some of that confidence up?
Yeah, well, first, I think we need to figure out where we are with our fixed mindset. Okay. So when we talk about a fixed mindset, what we're talking about then is that some of these beliefs that we're talking about that are born out of a fixed mindset, amount of intelligence and ability. So people operating in a fixed mindset are prone to avoiding challenges and failures, thereby robbing themselves of a rich life and experience of learning. So we want people to really get out of that mindset and shift more towards the growth mindset. And through that, it's through positive relationships, whether that's with your employers or with the young people that you're serving as well.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Some encouragement, someone to believe in you, I think really would make a difference as well. Help you kind of step over that fixed mindset into a growth mindset.
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
you speak a little bit more to the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset?
Yeah, so when I think about kind of a fixed mindset, a lot of people, I think it's about how smart people think that they are, right? So like you innately know something within that. So, a fixed mindset is, I'm not good at math, right? I'm not good at math because I'm not smart enough to understand calculus or prop stats or algebra, where really when we start to shift towards a growth mindset, we start to focus less on how smart a person is and more on the effort that's being put into something. So with a growth mindset, it's, I'm not good at math yet, but I can get better the more I practice and the more effort that I put into something.
So it's not really about kind of where you are currently. It's about like the effort and your own ability, your belief in yourself, kind of to be able to get better at something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, when you have positive relationships around you to help you to grow, right? Whoever that is, whether, again, that's family, coworkers that are saying, hey, it's okay to fail in front of me. A manager that says, hey, it's okay that you made this mistake, right? But let's work on fixing that and let's see if we can get you to another place. I mean, that's the best part about a growth mindset, is being able to have those people around you that say it's okay to make a mistake and we're gonna grow from here.
Mm-hmm. The other mindset that you've come and talked about with staff is mentoring mindset. Can you give us a little overview of that, like what the core components of a mentoring mindset are?
Yeah, so when we think about a mentoring mindset, we say that it's a way of thinking and interacting that places young people at the center of our work and allows mentors or other caring adults to be true partners in a young person's journey. So we really want the young person to be at the center of how adults interact with them. And again, that can be any caring adult in their life. It doesn't have to be someone whose title as a mentor, but those caring adults, teachers, coaches, other folks in the community, and how they interact with that young person should be with a mentoring mindset. Really, at its core, it's about connection.
Do you find when you use the word mentor, that kind of scares people off a little bit, and like they think that they have to take on some huge role in the life of a young person or another individual?
Yeah, mentor is a scary word to a lot of people. They don't like the title so much. I do, because I know that what people are doing with young people is mentoring. Right? Maybe they don't call it mentoring, but it is mentoring. And so when we think about the components of the mentoring mindset, we think about these 4 different things of intentional, that I see you, supportive, I've got you, developmental, I'm here to help, and communal, we're in this together. And really, I think a lot of people can relate to these and then, fortunately, unfortunately, get the title of mentor attached to them because that's what they're doing.
Right. Okay.
Right. When I did the mentoring mindset training that Christopher did not too long ago, I originally thought in my head, no, I really don't think I've had a mentor, right? By definition of what I thought a mentor was. And then after going through the activity, I realized all of these people that were in my life that really were mentors. Like, I was surprised, there was a teacher, my friend's mother, and a woman that used to babysit me when I was younger. So they all came up to my mind, and they were all really positive people in my life. And they really were mentors, but right off the bat, I would be like, no, I don't have any.
Right.
So there's so many more than people realize.
Yeah, and I don't think we realize, years later, we then give them that title. So maybe in the moment they weren't a mentor to us or we didn't think of them as mentors. But when we reflect back on what this mentoring mindset is, we can say, oh, wait a second. It was that babysitter. It was that mom's friend. It was that teacher that was a mentor. And so, again, let's give them the title that they so deserve for the work that they do.
Right. Yeah. I think, again, like with the word mentor, right, it has this connotation that there's a lot of responsibility that you have. And you mentioned those four. What were the four core components again, one more time?
Yeah, so it's intentional, I see you, supportive, I've got you, developmental, I'm here to help, and communal, we're in this together.
Okay. How can one, again, like those are important things to remember, but I feel like you could maybe get too caught up in like having to worry about remembering those things or having the responsibility. How do you is it just just be yourself and just be a positive role model for someone and a good mentor and like you'll be able to find it? Or is there more like intentionality that people should be doing when they're working with young people or parents, kids and families? Like should they be taking a little bit more time to think these things through, or should they maybe just relax a little bit and not overthink their role with that person? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a fine line there. I think to really have a mentoring mindset, you do need to be intentional with how you build those relationships with young people. But it is happening. People are doing it without even knowing that they're doing it. And so, we can kind of go through those different pieces of what it means to have a mentoring mindset and dig into like being intentional and being supportive and being developmental and communal a little bit more to see if people are actually doing these things. But I know that they are, if they're getting the title of mentor.
Right, right. Yeah. So, I mean, would you mind doing that? Just tell us a little bit more about each one of those if you are able to. Like the intentional piece, I see you, right? Like I think of that, I think just being able to really respect a young person or anyone, right, that you could be a mentor to and really be able to see them for who they really and genuinely are. So is there anything that you want to add to that?
Right, like showing an interest, right?
Yeah.
Genuine interest and really seeing that individual and not judging them in any way and just kind of being able to view them as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part of that is knowing the young person. And being able to know their goals, their interests, their skills, their personality. If you don't know the young person, how are you going to be able to help them anywhere after that? Knowing their context. So are there any ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that come into play? Are there any trauma-informed principles, youth developmental stages of where they're at, identity and culture, those different things about who that young person is and how they show up in the world?
Right.
And then knowing yourself. So then how do you interact with that young person? What's your identity, your privilege, your bias, your power, and the trauma that you bring in too when you work with a specific young person? And then using a strength-based lens as well to know that young person and know that we want to see them for the strengths that they bring and not those deficits. And
Yeah. One of the trainings that I've done is called the Healthy Outcomes from Positive Experiences training, which is a relatively new research around positive childhood experiences as opposed to adverse childhood experiences. And we know that ACEs are a big part of trauma-informed care, and there's a lot that's kind of come into this world now when it comes to social work and child welfare and knowing the impact of ACEs. But there's also, like you said, the really important positive experiences and the safe and nurturing relationships and environment and their ability to participate in community and culture and things like that that are really important for kids and families to get connected to, that can kind of mitigate a lot of those ACEs. Is you don't want to go up to somebody necessarily and say like, what's your ACE score? Like how many traumatic experiences did you have?
It's a clipboard and I want you to check
because I'm trying to be a better mentor and I just want to get to know you a little bit more. So tell me all the traumatic things that happened to you in childhood. Like you don't really want to do that, right? You don't want to be that intentional about it. But it is important to know some of that stuff, like you said. So
yeah, and we know that, I'm not a brain surgeon, but I do know that the neural pathways are changed through those positive relationships, and we know that that is something that research shows us.
Right, right. You mentioned like knowing ourselves too, right? So how might our own experiences and fears impact our ability to achieve a greater growth mindset as well as a more impactful mentoring mindset?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times when we're in our own heads about things, we're really having a hard time of like, how do I accomplish this thing without embarrassing myself? And people are so afraid of being judged. And I think that's something we need to fix kind of as a society, and that's a systems thing a lot of the time. People are afraid to try something in front of people. That's a big thing that we see. Not only do I think I'm bad at it, but then I'm also afraid to try it in front of other people. Or I think I might be good at this thing, but I'm afraid to try it in front of other people. And so then those fears kind of hold us back from really, again, our true greatness that we have within us to be able to achieve goals and things that we want to do in life.
Yeah, I think I've experienced probably some of that in my own life as I start to get older. I'm like, well, is this not something that I should even be trying anymore? Is this something that I'm just never going to be good at? And I, th- I mean, I know we're trying to encourage a growth mindset. I think there is some things that you want to be realistic about in life, right? Like I'm not gonna, I could maybe run a marathon, but I'm not gonna run a marathon 2 weeks from now. Like I need to actually train and commit to that and put the work and effort into. So I think a lot of it's about trying to find balance and being realistic. How would you suggest that somebody kind of balance a realistic point of view with a growth mindset? Because we want everyone to achieve their greatest potential, right? But at the same time, maybe there are some things that are maybe a little out of your realm.
I started playing the electric guitar when I was in my 40s, and I did question if I was having a midlife crisis. I didn't know if all of a sudden I was going to go buy a Corvette and be ready to rock and roll, but I did believe that it was something I'd try and could get better at. But let me tell you, it's really hard. It's so much harder than it looks. But
Yeah, and I think it's also relying on those relationships in your life as well. So were there people there that supported you, that were there to be supportive of you, that I also call them your accountability partner, is your mentor, that person who's going to hold you accountable and say, hey, did you practice this week, right? You said you wanted to get better at the electric guitar. Did you practice this week? Is this something you did? And helping to kind of set goals as well for folks, realistic goals, but saying, hey, I didn't practice this week. It was really busy. Or I'm trying to work on this really hard song, but it's not working. And, or can you listen to me play? And it might not be that good, but being able to like have that person to just listen to you really, really does mean a lot to have that supportive person there.
You mentioned the supportive relationships, and I think that's such a good parallel for those working in child welfare because they're trying to be able to support whoever it is, but a lot of times there are so many barriers facing a family or an individual: substance use, mental health, a myriad of issues that they might be facing. How can the helping professional not only maintain like kind of their own growth mindset, but support the families that they're working with to also be able to continue in a growth mindset and migrate away from like a fixed mindset? How could they be supportive to the other person? Like we've talked a lot about like our own personal ones and trying to have support people around us, but how can we be supportive to others?
Yeah, so I go back to that mentoring mindset piece. So that next part is that supportive, I've got you. Okay. And the first part of that we look at is that consistency. So being consistent, showing up when you say you're going to show up, because that's how you start to build trust within that relationship. Mm-hmm. And then that young person's going to say, hey, this person is showing up. I trust them. And then when they start to have those conversations or say like, hey, have you thought about trying this thing? Or what if we tried that? Or like, like, oh, no, I could never do that, right? Well, they trust that person enough now because they keep showing up and they keep being consistent. And so it makes the relationship just so much better to get that success that we're hoping to get out of that young person. We also want people to be fully present within their interaction. So it's great to show up, but if you're not mentally there, right? I mean, young people can tell when we're not really there or, it's just our job to be there. So really showing up and being there and being fully present within that interaction can be really helpful as well.
Right. Yeah. Easier said than done, maybe, Holly? Do you have any like sort of advice or stories or anything that you feel like you could relate to that's important for those in child welfare to keep in mind when they're trying to work with families and be really supportive and consistent? Because it can be deflating, right? Someone, a family or an individual you're working with, you keep trying to be supportive, but they keep running into these barriers, right? So,
Right. I definitely think what was said is so important. The not just showing up, but being present, because so often we are doing a million things, or right after we meet with this person, we have to go do this, that, and every other thing. Or before you got there, maybe something crazy happened, right? So you are in your head, and whoever you're meeting with is going to know that you are not there with them in the moment. So even before you go into a meeting, just take a couple minutes, breathe, ground yourself so you can go in and be present. But another thing that I thought of, besides you being supportive, is to help that person see other supports that they do have. Because a lot of times you have these supports that you kind of forget about, and you go through these life things and someone's really helped you out, and maybe you don't have contact with them that much, but hey, you know what? That person really helped me out. And maybe I can go back to that relationship and bring that person back into my life. So that's, I think, something that we could point people to do if they're not taking our support. That would be one of my suggestions.
That's just like it's a more strengths-based. You mentioned strengths-based, right? And I think it's just shift away from, because I think a lot of, individuals and families get so bogged down in the negative and like the wrong that they were done by the system or other people or things like that. And to be able to shift their mindset away from that and think about who in their lives has supported them, I think can make such a big impact.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. They've gone through so many challenges already, and how did they do that? They have some traits, some skills, something that
Right.
has gotten them through that. So those are things that you need to be reminded about, because people forget.
Right. I think a lot of us, no matter who you are, it's hard not to get bogged down in negative. It's hard not to get caught up in sort of the whirlwind of what's going on in the world or what's happened to me or victimization and things like that. So,
Yeah, you really have to take the time to think of the positive, because right away we initially think negative. That's where our brain goes.
right.
We think of negative things. So you really have to work at seeing positive things, and it does happen over time when you do it. It's like training yourself
Right.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I talk about, mentoring folks or folks being good mentors, a lot of the times I say you're 80% of the way of being a good mentor if you can show up and you can listen to a young person. I think a lot of times we don't give young people that opportunity to just be heard and how they're feeling. I had a mentee once who just said, no one listens to me. No one wants to hear what I have to say. No one wants to hear my side of the story. And so if we can just show up and listen to young people and give them that space, I think that can also help to create, again, those deepening relationships and show that we support them.
Yeah.
And remembering things, maybe the next time you see them, talk about some of the things that you had talked about previously, and they may say, hey, you remember that? And so
They
it
assume
really,
that you weren't actually
Yeah.
listening or
Yeah.
paying attention to
Yeah.
them, right? So, all right. So, seeing them and then showing up, and then so the third, those are the first two components, and that's the third component.
Yeah, so that third component is that developmental, I'm here to help.
Okay.
And so to be developmental, we say that, we should practice the recommended actions of the developmental relationships framework. And so this comes out of the Search Institute that's been doing research on relationships with adults and youth for over 50 years. And so they say there's kind of 5 categories that you need to do to have really positive relationships with young people. And that's to express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. So if we're able to do that as adults in young people's lives, it can just make the world of difference.
Yeah. I think you share power, expand possibilities. I think two things that maybe they've never had the opportunity to do before, or an adult in their life has never shared some of the power with them, or have shown them that there is a kind of an open door or open, things that they can access, the opportunities. When I think of, you might be the only person in their life that is showing them that, because they might be at home and not getting that, or in school somewhere and being told that's not an option for them or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, the way in which we share power with young people can be really different. And it also depends on the age of that young person, right? It can be as simple, though, as like, what book do you want to read, right? I mean, it's such a simple way to give young people that voice and choice of something they want to do that can be done in the classroom or at home in those kinds of ways. So just kind of figuring out how can you give young people the agency to say, hey, what do you want to do in this moment at this time? Because then it helps them down the line as we start to think about they have to make harder decisions. So if we give them a little agency now, it can be helpful then. But it's definitely a hard one for a lot of adults. There's definitely that power dynamic of like, hey, I'm the adult, I'm in charge. But I think when you relinquish a little bit of that, not a lot, a little, you can definitely help to create a positive relationship, and especially if they already trust and respect you in that way.
All right, so I see you. What was the second one? Then we just did the third one, which is the developmental
Support
one.
you.
Support. Yep,
I
support.
support you, and the developmental piece, the third one. So what's the fourth component?
And so that fourth component is communal, where we are in this together.
Okay.
So again, that's really that connecting youth to resources and those kind of social capital pieces, right? So who can we connect youth to? How can we create those webs of support for young people? Because it's not just our job as the one adult to solve all the problems. I always say that as a mentor and someone who has a mentoring mindset, you are Grand Central Station. So things are coming into you from that young person from all different angles. But it's not your job to solve every problem. What are those resources? Who are the people you know that can help a young person?
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it, because I think people think the word mentor, it's really heavy, it's a lot of responsibility, which it can be, but the way you just explained it, I think, is really clear and just can make it so much more welcoming.
Yeah, mentors don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we think of, Yoda and Luke, this wise sage is going to dump all this knowledge into a young person. And it's really not about that. It's about how do we use our own resources to help young people? Because we're not saviors. We're not here to fix young people.
How do you see that playing out in child welfare more when we talk about the communal aspect and sort of walking alongside a family as opposed to just like telling them what to do or having things be sort of compliance based? Do you see that shift happening?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The compliance piece, what comes out of that, right? That's
And telling somebody what they need to do in order to...
You need to do this, and once you do that,
opposed
then we're going to
to-
check it off and everything is fine, right? That is the way of the past. I would happy to say that. And now, families, they're part of assessments, and they let us know
Right.
their goals and what they want to
they
work
wanna
on,
work on.
and
Exactly,
are more open to us. If we go in there and we're pointing our finger, they're not going to open up and tell us things that they want to work on for their family. So things have definitely made a shift in that sense. For
And
sure.
thinking about how they can change their own behaviors and their own mindsets in a way.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what's the difference between, so I know this kind of goes back to growth mindset. What are some of the differences between using praise and encouragement?
Yeah, so when we think about praise, it focuses on that end result or accomplishment, where encouragement focuses on the effort or that persistence there. So, praise is, wow, you did a great job on this, or, you got an A on this, well done.
Yeah. There's no room for growth.
No, you've done the
kinda
best you can do.
The final,
Correct, right? But an encouragement is like, wow, you tried really hard on this, or I can see you tried really hard here, or you put in a lot of effort for this. Like, you should be really proud of that. And that's that encouragement piece, right? Encouraging them to be better, to continue to grow. We always say as adults, we should be lifelong learners, right?
Yeah.
And so why don't we make that for young people? Why is it you have to get the A, you have to do the best,
Right.
that there should be that room for growth?
Yeah.
And so really just not focusing on the praise, with well done or good job, that they don't know. You're just praising them, right, in kind of this ambiguous way, where encouragement is like, hey, you tried really hard on this paper and I can see that, right? So there's a finite thing.
It's like it keeps the door open,
Yes.
right? Whereas the praise, that's it. That's the end.
Yeah.
It shuts it. And I think the encouragement piece just keeps that door open for that, what you said, for growth.
I think that's so counterintuitive to us. So much of what we're told or whatever in society, what we see in society and media and things like that, like TV, movies. It's always like you did so good. You're so good. You're straight A's, and you got to have a 4.0 GPA, and you do this and that. And you strive for the best at all times. And it's just sort of like you said, then you've reached the mountaintop by the time you're 12. There's nothing left for you to do. Or it kind of goes the other end of the spectrum, right? Where you have now applied this extra pressure on yourself that you always have to be perfect, and you always have to strive for the best possible outcome.
Yeah, when you start to talk about these different phrases, right? We can kind of look at like a praise phrase here is, I'm proud of you for making a goal. Where an encouragement phrase is, all that hard work during practices appears to have paid off. You must have felt really good to have scored that goal. Right. So there's more there. It's a little bit more detailed than, again, good job.
Yeah.
Encouragement phrases, you figured it out all by yourself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You did the thing. You put in the work.
Right.
You put in the effort to
It's
be
about more about the process than it is about the outcome.
correct.
Right.
And I think it feels good, right? When someone says, I've seen you working hard, you should be proud, because a lot of times you're not. You're working hard, but you're not really proud of it. It's just you're doing it and you're doing it and doing it. And when someone else says, wow, I see you, I see that you've been working hard, you should be proud. You get that minute and you say, you know what? Yeah, I have been working hard, and I am proud. So it's a feel-good factor. I really think so.
Yeah, I think even at work, we could be working on a big project, might take lots of hours, many weeks, and then at the end of it, your boss goes, good job.
Yeah.
And you go, what? That's it? I put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this.
Right.
And so it's like, although we're like, oh, but that's a good thing for them to say. Well, it's a praise, right? They're not saying anything about the hours you put in or all that time or the research or the late nights you were there, So it's one of those big things around. The encouragement is just
Yeah.
It's
so
just
much
like
more
taking
important.
a little bit more time with it, right?
Yeah.
Really.
And I think it feeds into that negative sort of toxic work culture in a way too, that it's like, no matter how hard or how long you did work on something, at the end of the day, if you're only going to get a thumbs up or a pat on the back, you then feel like maybe you have to work that much harder to get the compliment or the praise again. So it just kind of feeds into this like vicious cycle of like, I always have to be working harder. I always have to be doing more and working more hours or whatever the case might be, which can then, of course, lead to burnout and things like that.
Exactly. And if you don't do well, you're not going to get a good job.
Right.
And so I need that praise. I need that thing that's going to keep me going. And if I don't get it, then so why would I take on a harder challenge, right? If I'm just going to get a good job or, I'm not going to do that because I want that praise.
Yes.
I want to be lifted up in a staff meeting. I want to be, no one's going to say, if instead someone said, wow, you've been working really hard on that project for weeks and weeks, and that's what's said in a staff meeting, that means, I think, so much more to folks because they can actually see, again, the hours that they're putting into something.
Yeah. Do you have an example from your own life where you've been shifting your mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Have you been also picked up the guitar lately, or have you done anything that you felt like you needed to? You've done a good job at moving, picking something new up, or learning something new, or whatever it might be, or something. Just a mindset where you were like, I'm never going to be good at that. I could probably think of some things, but anything in your own life that you want to share, you feel comfortable sharing that you've.
I'll share a couple of different things. So it was so funny. So you kind of mentioned in my bio that I run a community theater. So I'm going to use a couple of theater examples here. And so I started doing theater when I was 14 years old. And, by the time the pandemic happened, I was 29. And I was like, gosh, I can't do theater. We can't be in space together. We can't be inside. This is nothing we can do. So I picked up tennis. And so I started doing tennis. No tennis experience before that other than maybe some gym class tennising. And so I said to myself, though, okay, so from 14 to 29 was 15 years. I said, and so I picked this up at 30, and by 45, I could be just as good at tennis as I am at theater. And so this idea that, like, if I just kept practicing, I hit the court every day, I did the thing, I got an instructor, I had that confidant, that mentor, I could be better at this thing. But I think we're just so afraid to do that and to take that next step. I also tried to learn an instrument during COVID. That did not work. I did not try that. I said, you know what? No, we're gonna put that one on the back burner. And then I also mentioned being the, again, board president of the Community Players, and leadership has been one of those things that I've been having a growth mindset about. So I thought I knew what it meant to lead, but I honestly realize every single day when I work with people, I am learning new skills and getting better at it, but I am definitely failing along the way. But my other board members and my exec board really do support me, and my other mentors in my life support me around leadership and say, hey, maybe the way you handled that wasn't the best, but next time maybe you could think about this and how that works. And people give you the grace when you don't think you know everything as well. When they know you're learning and you're developing yourself, people are a lot more willing to be there and walk alongside you.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that's great.
What about a person in your life that was a mentor for you that had a big impact, and the things that they did that you've taken into your own life or that you want to take into your own life to be a better mentor for anyone in your life or any youth in your life that you might be working with?
I mean, I don't think we have enough time to talk about all the amazing people I've had in my life. I mean, and I think I got into this work because, again, just like Holly, I didn't realize there were so many people there supporting me and lifting me up that take an interest in you. But I guess I'll just kind of say one of the people that comes to mind is Ed Mastriano. So he was the previous president of the Community Players, but I've known him since I was 19 years old when I got involved with the Community Players. And he just really took me under his wing and got to know me, got to understand what I was about, how I wanted to get involved in the theater. He'd been involved in the theater for many, many years before that. So working along beside him and then getting up to that place of being on the board with him as president, him teaching me things about how to run a board of a nonprofit and working through those types of things. He was actually also a board member at Mentor Rhode Island at the time. Not how I got the job, but also just a wild kind of also crossing. It was so wild. And he's like, I'm on the board of that organization you just applied for, right? And I was like, oh, I had no idea. And so just have been able to work with him through my different organizations and all of that. And then now being president, having him to kind of lean on has been really great. And he retired from, he used to work at Cox Media, retired and actually worked at Mentor Rhode Island in the training department under me. So it's been kind of fun that there's been now this reciprocity of I get to teach him things about what I know about training and all of that and get him out in the field doing those things. So really, when mentoring is done well, it is just that reciprocal relationship. There's teaching and learning happening on both sides. Yeah. And that's how I know that mentoring is working and working well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he was probably using all those components that you mentioned, especially taking a genuine interest in you, right? And a genuine interest in your interest in theater. And like you said, taking you under his wing and just being a good support for you and being a good example. It sounds like he probably did so with some humility and some grace and didn't really have to be overly intentional or think too hard about it. He just kind of sounds like a good guy who took you under his wing just because he was genuinely interested in supporting another person.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, again, he knew who I was, right? He knew what I wanted to do in life. Yeah. He knew how I wanted to get involved. And definitely we saw value alignment right there. So we both enjoyed the theater. We both enjoyed giving back to nonprofits and that mentoring component. And so it has to be mutually beneficial for both parties to truly be successful, I think, on both sides. So it's just been great to be able to still have him and work with him and all that he does.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and to see the relationship come kind of full circle too.
Oh my God, it's
cool.
An amazing thing. It's one of those kind of really cool stories.
Nice. Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Christopher. Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you on the show today, and we will see everyone next time.
Thanks for having me.